Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Board of Directors meeting for May 1st, May Day 2018. I'd like to welcome everybody that's in attendance with us as we go about to do the city's business. Madam Clerk, at this time, if you would, please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Compuris, Director Fordson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Stoller.
Here. Let me call on City Director Ken Richardson for our invocation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Please bow your heads. Dear most gracious Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. We pray that our conversation tonight will be open, honest, and transparent, and we pray that our decision will be based on the benefit of all rather than a select few. We pray for the safety and security of all our city employees, but more importantly, for all of our city residents. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have, before we get into all of our items that are on our agenda, we have a couple presentations to make. So with that, I'm going to give the dais over to our Vice Mayor for just a moment as I make a proclamation and a presentation. First of all, I'd like to recognize again another great success for one of our high school athletic teams, the Little Rock Central High School 7A boys swim team. You see a photograph of that up there on our screen. On February 24th of 2018 in Bentonville, the Little Rock Central High Tigers won the 7A boys swimming state championship. Central defeated Conway High by a score of 440 to 419. The next ranked teams were Bentonville West, Cabot, and Fayetteville. Central had more than double the points of the 4th, 5th, and 6th place teams. Now, what makes this state championship even more remarkable is that Central did not win first place in any of the individual races. What they did do is they had a strong squad which consistently did well throughout the entire meet, giving them the ability to get the score of 440. So it really underlines the fact that this championship was truly a team effort. Now, what's also equally significant is that this is the first swimming state championship for Central High School in 60 years. Let's hear an applause for that. Now, they have come close to winning, including a second place finish last year, which was obviously the motivation to be first place this year. So we're excited that they captured this win. There were 5 members of the squad that were named All-State: Levi Lewis, Elliot LeBeau, Carson Taylor, Vincent Jarowski, and Andre Chu, who all received this honor. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Chu were also recognized last year. Dr. Beth Maris is the faculty coach of the team, and Mary Jo High is the community coach of the team. Unfortunately, our principal, Nancy Rousseau, was unable to be here tonight due to another school event. John Daniels is the athletic director for the school district, and Martin Burton is the deputy superintendent and associate superintendent for high schools. Of course, we know that Mike Poor is also the superintendent of the school. So I'd like now for the team and the coaches to come up so we can present this plaque that reads as follows. Mayor Mark Stodola, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate the Little Rock Central High School Tigers for the 218 Boys Swimming 7A State Championships. In the quest for the championship, the players and the coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Presented on this May 1st date of 2018. So, guys, would you come on up? And I'd like to have you come up here first and introduce yourself. Tell us what grade you're in. If you're seniors and you know what you're going to do in the future, let us know that. If you don't, let us make sure you're going back to Central High at least, okay? And then we'll stand over here for a photograph when we get finished. Yeah.
Sure. I'm a senior. I'm Levi Lewis. I'm planning to swim at Northern Michigan University, where I'm going to major in environmental science.
Hello, my name's Ian High. I'm a senior this year. I plan on swimming at University of Missouri St. Louis and majoring in physics.
Hello, I'm Logan Jennings. I'm a senior this year. I plan to go to the University of Arkansas, and I am undecided on my major.
Hello, my name is Nicholas High, and I'm a sophomore at Central High.
Hi, my name is Jackson Dale. I'm a freshman and I plan on going to Central next year.
My name is Christopher Tsai, and I'm a 10th grade at Central High.
My name's Logan Wilson, and I'm also a freshman. Yep. Yes.
My name is John Payton, and I'm a junior and will be returning.
My name is David Reynolds, and I'm a sophomore at Central High.
My name is Carson Traylor, and I will be swimming my 2019 senior season at Little Rock Central High.
All right.
Hello, my name is Val Enrichu, and I'm a junior.
Mary Jo?
Ladies.
And Coach?
I'm Mary Jo High, and I'm the head coach, proud head coach of the Little Rock Central Tigers state champion swim team. This is Adele Simmons, and she is my assistant coach, and also Beth Maris, Dr. Beth Maris. And these women are instrumental in making this a great program, as are all the parents that are out in the audience today. It takes a lot of volunteers to make this program run.
Thank you very much. And if the parents of some of our swimmers would stand up, please. Let's recognize you. Yes, sir. All right. Let's make sure everybody's in the picture here. Oh, we gotta go this way.
Over your shoulder.
Bless you.
And thank you, City of Little Rock, for recognizing us.
Vice Mayor.
Well, thanks to all of you for making Little Rock proud. And certainly I heard a few seniors graduating, so I hope there's a good recruiting class going on for next year. You've got a lot to defend now.
That's right.
What? You're not allowed to recruit. Well, okay.
Mayor.
I didn't say that word.
If I can, thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to make a very objective statement. I'm beginning to sound like a broken record up here, but I certainly want to congratulate the young people who attend the greatest high school in the state. And remember, this is objective in the nation and the world. Hail to the old gold. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, and you're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of our deliberations, or you're happy to leave if you'd like to. The next item of business is a proclamation which I'd like to issue, dealing with Building Safety Month. Know you all people by these present screenings. Whereas our city of Little Rock, in continuing efforts to address the critical issues of safety, energy, efficiency, and resilience in the built environment, that affects our citizens both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster gives us confidence that our structures are safe and sound. And whereas our confidence is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians of building safety and fire prevention, through officials, architects, builders, tradespeople, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, which use a government consensus process that brings together local, state, and federal officials with expertise in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect Americans in the buildings where we live, work, worship, and play. And whereas international codes, the most widely adopted building safety, energy, and fire prevention codes in the nation, are used by U.S. cities, counties, and states. These modern building codes also include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildfires, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Code Saves Lives is the theme of Building Safety Month of 2018, and it encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of building safe and resilient construction, building solutions for all ages, the science behind the codes, and to learn from the past to build for tomorrow, and building codes that are smart investments, Building Safety Month 2018 encourages appropriate steps that everyone can take to ensure that the places where we live, learn, work, worship, and play are safe and sustainable, and recognizes that countless lives have been saved due to the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at our homes and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential services provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Mark Stodler, the mayor of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim May 2018 as Building Safety Month here in the city of Little Rock, and urge all citizens of Little Rock to join me in this recognition and celebration. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and seal on this first day of May 2018. And who is here to accept this? Chuck.
Chuck Givens.
Our inevitable director of our codes department, Chuck Givens. Chuck, thank you so much to you and all of your staff for what you do to not only make sure that when people are building buildings, they're doing it right, but to keep all of us safe in the process.
Yes, sir. We try, and we thank you for your support and the board of directors' support and our administration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You bet.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of additions, and I'm sorry. We have one more presentation. City Director B.J. Wyrick is going to tell us about some wonderful event that's going to be happening at our Little Rock National Airport. Director B.J. Wyrick, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard a little bit about this. I'm excited to hear more.
Well, last week when I announced it, I could not think of the name of these cars as the reason why I said it was about the airport. But I I serve as a liaison with Little Rock Airport, as you all have let me do for this last year, and it's been a great experience. The airport is in good hands. We have a couple of board members that are there that are, running the airport real well, and then we have Ron Matthew that's doing a great job as well. But at the last meeting, I learned of an event that's coming to the airport, and it's called Mini Takes the States 2018. The map that you're looking at there is the route where Mini Coopers are going to start on the east side in Orlando and wind up in Colorado, or on the west side in Portland and wind up in Colorado. But if you see that little jog, they've got to go from New Orleans to Little Rock, Arkansas to Dallas, Texas. So they're all coming to the Little Rock Airport. The airport was able to accommodate them because they have a runway that is under construction. It's going to be big enough for the folks to come in. It's a big event. There will be thousands of Mini Cooper cars that you'll be seeing going up and down the roads, and they will have the right-of-way. So with that, I'm going to have Scott do a little presentation. It's real cute, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Good morning and welcome to the 2017 Minis on the Mac.
This is a great event. This is Mini on the Mac. I'm trying to break the record.
Today, we have actually met people from all over the world, not just the U.S.
We've seen cars from Florida and Texas and Virginia and all over the place, so we've been surprised at how many cars have come from quite a distance just to be here. So.
Folks, this is really something you ought to see. Even if you're not a Mini owner, you should see this. It's incredible.
Well, it seems that's all going to motivate us to buy a Mini Cooper between now and July or June. Go ahead, Director Wyrick.
Actually, you can rent them if you want to do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can rent them. But they're supposed to be at the airport on the 17th, July 17th, between 7 and 9. They have a Facebook page, and they've been touting on the Facebook page that when they come to Little Rock, that they need to go to the River Market and to the Clinton Library. So it should be a big event for Little Rock. Thousands of Mini Coopers running around every place, plus eating and staying in our city. And I hope they don't go from New Orleans to Dallas and skip Little Rock, but we're on the route, so hopefully they'll all wind up here. I just thought it was fun and something neat that's coming to our city and wanted y'all to know about it.
Well, thank you for bringing that to us, Director Wyrick. I know they've been talking about an agreement with the airport, and so I'm pretty sure they're going to keep Little Rock on that list. I can't imagine.
No, the people.
The ability for all these thousands of people to take off to take that trek.
Yeah.
It's almost like the
No,
like
the people decide to
railroad,
skip Little Rock.
The old railroad of the 1800s trying to meet in the middle of the country. Okay, very good. All right, we can now move on to the substance of our agenda. The first thing is an addition, an M1 ordinance, which is to repeal an ordinance that was due to a clerical error. Is there a motion to repeal? There's a motion and a second to repeal. Is there any discussion?
What is it?
Okay, a question, go ahead. If you'll hit your button, please.
It's a motion to add it to the agenda is all the motion is. It's an ordinance you'll have to read 3 times.
Oh, I see. You want to add it to the agenda and then we're going to repeal it. Okay. All right. So there's a motion and a second to add it to the agenda. And from that point, then it will be a request to repeal it. Mr. Carpenter, while you're talking about it, it looks like somebody might have a question about what it deals with, please. Would you explain it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
It's just saying to repeal what?
There was a zoning ordinance that was defeated by the Board of Directors. Accidentally, because we prepared them to be signed, the ordinance that should not have been signed was executed by everybody and filed. Nobody knew about it until they were ready to sell the property and they found that it was under a particular zoning classification. This merely repeals that prior ordinance, which was defeated before anyway.
It has to do with zoning? Is that
Yes, ma'am.
And where is it? What's the area?
I think it's in downtown Little Rock, isn't it?
Does anybody know?
Yeah, it's on West Markham Street.
What?
It's on West Markham Street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Okay, so we'll add that to the agenda. And there is also a request to withdraw ordinance number 9 that's on your agenda. Is there a motion? Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to withdraw this ordinance from the agenda. All in. What is that, Director Adcock? Oh, we got changed from this afternoon, sorry. We go over these in the afternoon, and I have the one that we went over in the afternoon, but somehow we got different numbers. Okay, so it is actually Resolution 8 on the agenda you have before you. To defer it. Radically changed from this afternoon till this evening.
That's why we put a new one at your plate every time.
Thank you. All right, so it's not to be withdrawn as it was earlier today. It's to be deferred.
No, it's a different one. 8, we got notice this afternoon after policy that
I see.
they wanted to defer
very
it.
good. So the first one that we're dealing with is Resolution 8, which is a motion to defer till May 15th. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The resolution will be deferred. Now, the next one is what we talked about earlier, which is ordinance number 9 on your agenda, which is to have that ordinance withdrawn. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Now, hearing none, all in favor of the motion being withdrawn from the agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. That ordinance is also withdrawn. All right, we can move on to the consent agenda, items 1 through 5, all resolutions. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the resolutions.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Gene Summers Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $198,194.40 for Hutzel Road drainage improvements and for the purposes funding from the 2012 through 8-cent capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the city manager to execute a contract with Arkansas Line Marking LLC in an amount not to exceed $146,520 for pavement markings within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to execute a contract with Harris Construction Management Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $134,622 for the construction of the University District Harrison Street sidewalks and for the purposes funding from the 2012 through 8-cent capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the city manager to endorse a resolution and sign grant documents and execute agreements to utilize a Transportation Alternatives Program grant funds to fund the creation of a master complete street plan that will assist with the implementation of the Complete Streets policy pursuant to ordinance number 21,029 of April 21st, 2015, and for the purposes, a resolution to certify local government endorsement of the Joseph T. Ryerson and Son Incorporated, located at 7701 Lindsay Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, to participate in the Arkansas Tax Back Program as authorized by Arkansas Code Section 15-4-2706D of the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003, and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on any of these items? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is approved. We can now move on to citizen communication, and I have two cards for citizen communication. The first one is from Ron Muse concerning the at-large city director positions. Is Mr. Muse here? Mr. Muse, not here. Okay. The next card is Mr. Rakop to talk about the OK program.
Good evening, Mayor. Saturday, they had a program, the OK program did a presentation they do every year called Before the Casket, where they actually have a casket in there that, and they have all the OK participants sitting like where the choir would sit in the church, and then they have families who have been victims of violence. Notably, I think they had two from this year and one from last year who talk about how that impacted them, and then they have speakers and things like that. I was sorely disappointed that there wasn't anyone from the command staff of the police department there to support, I believe, a police program. There wasn't anybody from the city there. There were abundance at the ceremony for the graduation of the academy of the current police officers the day before, and unfortunately there were only two white people there. I was one and the speaker was the other. This is a town that's racially divided, and the OK program does a magnificent job of trying to help young children stay out of gangs and stay out of trouble. And when that program is not supported, when they have presentations like this by city leadership, by command staff with the police department, and even by citizens, that's a sad thing. And we know we're already we're one less homicide this year than we were last year. And if the homicide trends keep up, then we'll be where we were last year with one of the higher rates. And when you have programs like the OK program that try to stem that and they don't get support, that's just a terrible thing. And I'm just here to chastise you guys for not being there, and the command staff for not being there, and that we should support this program. And Mayor, you'll be glad I didn't say anything about firing the chief tonight.
I think you just did. There's always ways to be creative. Thank you very much. I know that this board supports the OK program in many, many ways, and certainly there are many programs that they have that I've attended, and I think there's some other people that have attended. So I don't know what people's schedules were on Saturday, but I don't think that that's a reflection of the lack of importance or how important we consider the OK program to helping the kids that we think are so most important. So with that said, we can now move on to our grouped items 6 and 7. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read ordinance number 6 and ordinance number 7.
Did you want to add item M1 to grouped?
Yes, let's go ahead and see if we can add the ordinance that we put on the agenda, the one on the repeal.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned industrial district titled West Tree Service Revised Short Form PDI, located at 6300 Forbing Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Central Acquisitions LLC, short form PDC, located at 12,620 Lawson Road, Pulaski County, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to repeal ordinance number 21,274 of July 19, 2016, due to a clerical error, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, first reading.
To suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned industrial district titled West Tree Service Revised Short Form PDI, located at 6300 Forbing Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Central Acquisitions LLC, short form PDC, located at 12,620 Lawson Road. An ordinance to repeal ordinance 21,274 due to a clerical error, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, second reading.
To suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these three ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to, wait a minute. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan industrial district titled West Tree Service, revised short form PDI, located at 6300 Forbing Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled Central Acquisitions LLC, short form PDC, located at 12,620 Lawson Road. An ordinance to repeal ordinance 21,274 due to a clerical error, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, third and final reading.
Okay, we've had all three readings. All in favor of the passage of these ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed, and on the emergency clause on the M1 ordinance, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. Now we can move on to our individual items, items 8 through 11. And let me ask for the reading of resolution number 8.
Mayor, 8 and 9 are gone.
Deferred.
Excuse me, that one is deferred, yes.
And 9.
Is withdrawn.
And so is 9.
Withdrawn.
Was withdrawn. So, we'll move on to number 10. Madam Clerk, first reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Cigar Republic, short form PCD, located at 1315 Breckenridge Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Cigar Republic, short form PCD, located at 1315 Breckenridge Drive. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Cigar Republic, short form PCD, located at 1315 Breckenridge Drive. Third and final reading.
Okay, we do have one card. Is the applicant present? If you'd like to come forward, please.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I had sent an email out to each of you and I only got 2 replies. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to read you the bulk of the basics of that email and then let the others speak and then give a quick presentation. Take me just a couple minutes after that, if that would be okay.
All
So
right.
in the email, I just highlighted 5 points of my application that, again, I'm not sure if you got this, but it's kind of important. So number 1 is I met with over 60 concerned members of the 3 neighborhood associations at Emmanuel Baptist Church Monday, January the 2nd. After a 20-minute presentation and about a 10-minute Q&A, most of them were much more comfortable with the project. Afterwards, I was fully endorsed and supported by the Breckenridge Neighborhood Association, and Carolyn Evanstone, their president, is here, and I hope she will speak also. But I was very happy to be invited to that event. It was a great event, had a big turnout, and I think that since that event, the concerns of the neighborhood have definitely calmed down. The majority of the points that I wanted to get across at that event was to calm them down about, there was a lot of discussion about if it became a private club, what could happen down the road. Well, point 2 is I worked closely with the staff of the city planning department to put together an application that had a good chance of probably being approved. And the most important part of that application was to say that this would only be good for my business. So no other club can go in there. If I release, I'm buying the building, by the way. If I release the building to somebody else, or if I sell the building, under my application, someone else would have to reapply for all new zoning. So this would only be good as a private club for Cigar Republic. So I agreed to close early, at midnight or earlier, to have no loud music playing on the patio. And again, I agreed to these things on my application, not because of pressure. I just wanted to put together a good application. No loud music on the patio, no loud music or live bands inside. We requested limited for my business only. And I even offered to offer my members free Uber service if they happen to have a few too many drinks. And I still want to do that. Because of all these things, the city planning department did in fact give me their full recommendation, and on Thursday, April 5th, I got a unanimous vote of 11-0, which I was very happy about. Number 3, this is a retail establishment, so people hear private club and they think maybe nightclub or something. This is a retail cigar place. So I'm going to have the largest humidor in the state. So an average humidor is about 200 square foot. Mine will be 600 square foot. We're opening in the mornings because I have to sell cigars during the day to make the bills work. It doesn't work without that. Cigars come with a natural sales tax, but there's also 50 cents per stick tax added also, which is good for the city. And we're going to have a big selection of bourbon and whiskey, which comes with a 33% tax. So I hope to be adding good tax revenue through this business. 4th, this location is in need of a change. I'm not sure if any of y'all are too aware of this building, but it's been a Mexican restaurant for about 40 years, and then most recently an Italian bistro. And it needs a new concept. Bill Criswell's the current tenant there, and through this process, he and I have actually become friends, and he'll just tell you, he made really good money there for the first 4 or 5 years, but the revenues have been declining steadily the last couple of years, and he doesn't think it's no longer a viable location for a restaurant. It's just a little too big, and there's a lot of restaurant competition now. He's losing money, and he closed without even knowing that I'm going to buy the building. He's closing just hoping I buy it, but it's cheaper for him to close and pay rent than to stay open. The kitchen's old. It needs some help. I don't want to talk bad about the building because I'm buying it. I'm excited about buying it, but the kitchen needs work. Okay, number 5. The most important part and final part of the email I sent you is number 5, and that is that all the questions and concerns that I've received to date have been about how I can make sure the place is run nice and safe and doesn't become an out-of-control bar. Very reasonable concern for the neighborhood. The answer is simple. A private club designation allows me to control my environment better. Members are not based on age, ethnicity, or income. Everyone's welcome to join. But if you're too loud, too irritating, if you're dressed inappropriate, or get drunk often, I can take care of the situation. If not, it's an open restaurant. I've got to get a restaurant liquor license. I'm in the back worrying about hamburgers instead of worrying about the front of the house. It just doesn't make any sense. So those are the points that I emailed you. I hope you got those. If not, I hope I made them clear tonight. After whoever speaks, I'd like to come back up and I have something to hand out to each of you and speak for another 1 or 2 minutes, and I'll be done. Is that okay?
Well, we'll see if it's necessary, sir.
Okay, I definitely would like to hand out what I have. If you don't mind, I can do that now or later.
What is it that you wish to hand out?
It's a layout of the floor plan. And
Go ahead and hand that out
Okay,
now, if
great.
you would. Yeah. I have one card that wishes to speak in favor of this. Carolyn Evastone, I believe it is.
It's Carolyn, excuse me, Carolyn Evanstone, sir.
Okay, very good.
I won't take much of your time. I do want to say thank you to Director Peck and Director Adcock for coming to our Neighborhood Association meeting the other night and helping us waylay some fears of not only people in our neighborhood, but in neighborhoods around us about this business. Mr. Miller has made a grand effort to make sure that this business is fitting with the family-friendly neighborhood that we have and the neighborhoods surrounding this business. He has done a lot to make sure that we are all very comfortable with what he plans to do. And when I first heard about this, I panicked. I was scared. But all those fears have been laid to rest. I haven't heard any more complaints from people in my neighborhood or the complaints of people in neighboring neighborhoods, nor have I seen any more on next door that weren't quickly brought to resolution by some other person who had been to either the meeting that we'd had before or had come to the city planning meeting and heard him talk. So I think everyone's fears about this business have been laid to rest. I'm hoping that you will give him this private designation tonight, and I look forward to having Mr. Miller in our neighborhood. and to the revitalization that he will bring to our area with the money that he plans to invest in the Breckenridge area. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any comments or questions from board members? Director Peck. Oops.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Mr. Miller. And I want to say that I think a lot of us got bombarded about emails early on, and we had a great meeting. I had lots of negative no's, and just about everyone changed their mind to yes, yes, yes after our very productive meeting several weeks ago. So I am happy to support you. And again, I've had one or two people that are still leery, and it was just a misunderstanding about what a private club meant. Jamie did a great job explaining, and so I wish you well. Thank you.
Comment on the handout I passed out?
Yes, you may. I would keep it brief because you're
Very-
going in the right direction.
Very brief. Very brief. The vote is simply about whether I can turn the kitchen into indoor golf. Indoor golf's become a really big business, but Arkansas doesn't have any two indoor golf simulators, or any in the state. These will be the first two. And it's just going to be a fun environment to play indoor golf and, enjoy the atmosphere. So that's what it looks like with indoor golf as opposed to a 50-year-old kitchen. Thanks.
You bet. All in favor of the passage of ordinance number 10 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinance is approved. We can now move on to ordinance number 11. And let me ask for first reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Meyer Longform PDC, located at 10 Rusty Tractor Lane, Pulaski County, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Meyer Longform PDC, located at 10 Rusty Tractor Lane, second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
All in favor of suspending the rules indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan and zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Meyer Longform PDC, located at 10 Rusty Tractor Lane, third and final reading.
Are there any questions? The applicant is present. If there are any questions for the applicant? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinance is passed. Okay, that takes us to item number 12. Let me open this up for discussion. Is there any discussion by any board members at this time? Director Hendricks, did you point your light on? All right, go ahead, please.
This is the at-large situation. At-large. Is that where we are?
You're recognized.
Okay, thank you. The thing that I want to say, and I've been thinking about it, and I think I sent each one of you an email today, and I want to preface my subject by reminding us that in the pledge that we did today is that this at-large conversation has to do with liberty and justice for everybody. And I don't see that now. I've been sitting here for 11 years, and then I was here in the 90s, and it's the same thing. But what I did, I got on the computer and read some information, pulled up some information about the at-large positions. They were created in 1921 or 1929. And that is where this started. But then it converted back in 93, 94. I may not have these dates right, but in essence, I think you know what I'm talking about, is that we did select the 3 at-large positions that we have now. If you take a look at this board, and particularly, I'm speaking for the constituents throughout the city of Little Rock, black and white. I'm not just speaking for black folk. I'm speaking for everybody wanting to have a right to do something. So what I'm asking is that if you all would comment so that we could share what's going on. I know that I might ask the question, has anybody else ever attempted to do the at-large change? I don't think so, because it seems that some people are comfortable in the positions, but it's not fair. So I would like some discussion on it. Don't be scared, don't be afraid, because I'm certainly not afraid to talk about it. It's an issue, and it needs to be addressed. I'm sitting next to my friend Computers, Joan. They've been on this board over 20-some odd years. I'm calling names, okay? And it's unequal. I have attempted to do good legislation for this city as a native of this city. Born a stone's throw from the state capitol many years ago. And I just don't see how you all even feel comfortable sitting up here knowing that the at-large positions, they discriminate against me. I know. I don't know about Doris or Ken. I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. And then I'm speaking for the community that I serve. So that's my thing. So I like to hear you all rebuttal or whatever you want to do, but you know I'm ready for you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had every intention on being a silent observer on this issue, on this matter. But during my Ward 2 infrastructure meeting in Southwest Little Rock, one of my constituents repeatedly asked me, how can I assure her that their recommendation is going to be included in the work that the staff is going to do? And she asked that question twice, and I said, as your ward representative, only way I can assure you is making sure we have community forums that take your recommendation in consideration and trust in the belief and objectivity and transparency of our staff. Any more involvement of that, any more involvement from me from a micromanagement standpoint makes those Ken's recommendation rather than the citizen's recommendation. And my good friend Joan made a comment that made it clear that no at-large director had any involvement in those recommendations, which raised an interesting question for me. That is either by force or choice. Either way, it still raises some interesting questions for me. And I'd like to pose some of those questions, and Bruce, I would expect an answer in the form of memos that we've gotten similarly in our pony, and things I think we need to consider and look at. First, it doesn't matter my opinion or thought on this, but what matters is how the citizens of Little Rock want to be governed. That was the first point I made. It doesn't make any difference how I feel about this. My second point was we need to understand how our city arrived at this current form of government and what other forms did Little Rock have, and what were the changes and why. And I want these to be included in our pony as answers to these questions, Bruce. Thank you, Tom. And what is the election history of our current form of at-large directors? How many different at-large directors has the city had in this current form? How long do at-large directors serve, and what's the average and what's the longest? And had those questions not been raised, those answers not been given that night in my infrastructure meeting on April 16th, I had every intention, every intention of being a silent observer. But that comment that Joan made really raised some questions in my mind. And what wards do our at-large directors live in and have historically lived in? And it's certainly very important for us to know what our ward constituents want. Public meetings are warranted, and any kind of conversation, we need to have some kind of community dialogue. We need to have community meetings to get input from our community, because this is a community issue in terms of how they want to be governed. And I suggest citywide meetings on this issue. I also want to remind us that the representation in the city government must be equal for all others. And I think that was included in my prayer tonight, asking that decisions that we make up here are for the benefit of all, not just a select few. And we all need to understand, city leaders, to remember that the perception of us or people in our community not being represented by all directors can lead to some huge problems, i.e. Ferguson and the issue that happened in Ferguson. We're all aware of that. How many other similar cities that have this form of government in our state?
No.
And I think to the extent, and once again, it's bigger than, I don't have any preference one way or the other, but these are discussions we need to have Community discussions, much like we did with the mayor being a full-time mayor, much like we did in September 2011 with us having an additional sales tax, get community input. It doesn't make any difference what I think, how I feel about it. This is a community-wide issue. It depends on what the community thinks and decide on how they want to be governed. And to me, Irma, that should be the point of the matter in terms of what we need to go forward with. And with that, Mayor, I'm through. And I had no intention of saying anything until Joan raised that issue on April 16th that made it clear to the community that at-large directors had no involvement, none whatsoever, in the infrastructure recommendations, which I thought was really, really critical, because either by force or choice, it still represents some real serious questions in my mind. Thank you.
Director Hendricks, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think Director Richardson sort of touched on the fact that when we made the mayor, 4 months after he was elected in 2006, a mayor with veto power, nobody up here complained. So it's clearly that it's discrimination. I don't care what you say. And I think that you may think it's not relevant, but to me it's relevant because I was surprised that we came in here after being elected 4 months and the mayor had Tracy Steele over at the state capitol to do a piece of legislation for the mayor to have veto power with a mega buck salary. I only make $18,000. Okay, but nobody talked about giving. Okay, Tom, don't turn your light on. And the other thing that I want to say is that we just need to do something.
Mr. Carpenter, do you want to correct the record as it relates to that issue that was just raised?
Well, I know that the legislation went forward. I worked with David Johnson. I've heard that I've just heard that Mr. Steele was also involved. But for Director Richardson and Director Hendricks particularly, I want you to know that in the 1980s, the Leadership Roundtable brought a lawsuit against the city, against it for the election of directors at large and a mayor being elected from within the seven by the seven, and made allegations as to violation of Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act. Section 2 is violated not because there is a discriminatory practice, but because there is an impact. The case was tried, went to the Eighth Circuit, and was denied review by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the findings were that that was not the case. At the time of the decision, the African American voting population was around 20 to 28%. The African American membership of the board of directors was 27%. And there had been no proof established that there had been any denial of opportunity to run for this office. In the future Little Rock process, which began under Tom Dalton when he was the city manager, there were 3 proposals that were being considered. One was to go to mayor council, and in fact, I think we had an election on that was not successful.
I want to interrupt, Tom. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the at-large here?
Right, I'm talking about the history of this particular
situation. Are you saying it's good or bad that we go at-large? What are you saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just giving you the history.
Well, what are you talking about? Why are you talking?
Well, if you'll let him finish, Director Hendricks, he's given us a history lesson, which is very important.
Yeah, but it's not relevant to my at-large.
Well, yeah, it is relevant. It's very relevant, and you want people to have dialogue and engagement. I think this is very important.
But he's not a man.
It may not be what you want to hear, but it's very important.
Okay.
And you'll see it in writing in light of some of the questions. But Director Richardson, I got to tell you, some of these I don't know if I can possibly answer. However, I will ask Scott Carter to help me in terms of who's been who on the board of directors all this time. The Future Little Rock had 3 basic ideas about it. Future Little Rock was a brainstorming session for where we want the city to go and how we want it to get there. One of the subgroups was a governance subcommittee. It looked at the concept of a directly elected mayor. It looked at a change to mayor council. It looked at a change to the way in which we selected board members, whether we should have all wards, no wards, some at large, or a combination. And the committee eventually recommended to the board of directors that we have we've got now, the 731, that there would be a directly elected mayor who would receive at least 40% of the vote in an initial election or face a runoff, that we would maintain the plurality election for all ward positions, whether they were at large or whether they were by ward. And that was done because of the analysis that plurality elections eat away very substantially at any capability of one group or another group to block access to the ballot. And that's what went forward. It was submitted to the people for a vote. They voted for it. In the first board of directors that had that particular makeup, one of the 3 at-large board of directors was African American, elected citywide. About 8 or 10 years later, there was a request to go further, and so we went into the Vision Little Rock process. And in Vision Little Rock, there was also a governance committee. It made the decision that we would stay with the city manager form of government, and it recommended that we stay with the 731 situation. 5 years after that, and I don't remember who the 2 chairs were. One of them is Ruth Bell of the League of Women Voters, and I don't remember who the other chair was, but they did a review only of governance within the city and recommended that we go forward in that way. And I can't remember if it's 4 years or 6 years ago now, but John Walker filed a lawsuit against the city of Little Rock, alleging that the at-large representation violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We analyzed the elections at that time to the date of his lawsuit, and we had these reviewed, and what we found was there was no evidence of any inability or barrier to competition for any particular race.
No, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Carpenter, and I'll recognize you appropriately, but not at this point in time until Mr. Carpenter finishes.
In any event, we looked at it at that time. We have not looked since that lawsuit was filed. It was dismissed. I will say that you asked, can we go to this? There were a question as to we could have the number of wards. Yes, we can. The City Manager Enabling Act, which was passed at the behest of the City of Little Rock because of the future Little Rock process, gave great flexibility to a city manager form of government. So we can go from all at large, none at large, a mixture of at large, and the ordinance that you have put before the board in terms that would have 10 districts which would be elected by plurality is one of the options that we've got to go forward with. So you're right. It is a policy question to be discussed by the board.
Director Richardson, you're recognized.
Thanks again, Mayor. Tom, my points made no reference to lawsuits, but I appreciate you bringing it up. I do remember shortly after I was elected, I think John Walker, on behalf of 4 people, had filed a lawsuit dealing with that issue. And as I said earlier, it doesn't matter my position or thoughts on this issue. What matters is how the citizens of Little Rock want to be governed. And to your point with reference to lawsuits, I made no reference or no issue, no conversation about lawsuits, but you did raise an interesting issue for me is whether or not, how many other similar sized cities, how many similar cities have this form of government, and are there any lawsuits associated with those forms of government? And to the point, to your issue on, you may not be able to answer these questions immediately. I would expect doing some intense research, we could utilize or figure out some best practices, much like a lot of us, we want these youth development programs that are funded here periodically. We want them to come back with some research and evaluation on what's most effective. I would expect, and I will jot these down in the form of email and copy all you guys, and then that way you can tell me those you can't answer and we can't answer, and those we don't have the information or historic information. You just gave us that brief history to deal with these questions and points that I raised.
Director Richardson, I will do that. I will tell you there are no other cities in Arkansas that have a setup like Little Rock does. The city of Texarkana has a manager government, and they attempted to do that. The statute this city offered and that was accepted by the legislature allows for cumulative voting and block voting, which are 2 different ways to deal with the fairness of the voting practices. The other thing I will tell you is that the city of Austin, Texas, which we look to often in order, because it's a capital city and a university city and so forth, and it's got a river, has a mixed selection of board members like we do. They were challenged 4 years ago on the at-large representation and were successful.
Well, thank you for that, and that may expand my question on that issue and that point, but thank you for that. And I will jot these points down in the form of email and send it to you, the city manager, and CC my colleagues on the board, because I think it's something that requires some kind of conversation, some kind of discussion. I mean, we have far more discussion and conversation about what kind of youth development programs that we're funding, and those programs are having a significant less impact on the residents of our city. So I will send that out. And once again, I'll say this repeatedly, this is more important than how I feel, what my thoughts or positions are. What's important is how our city's citizens want to be governed. To me, that's the most important thing. And I think we've had special elections to make the mayor a full-time position shortly after he was elected. And I think that we thought that was important enough to send that to the citizens. And I think that we should similarly look at having some kind of conversations on this issue, and rather than being strangely silent, that this warrants some kind of conversations, in my opinion. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Let me just say that to all the board members that if you have questions that you wish to be answered as it relates to these issues of representation at large, wards, we've got 3 forms of government that are allowed by statute. There are rules as it relates to that. You can have people run from a ward and have to run at large.
Right.
And everybody in the city votes on somebody that's going to serve a particular ward. That's one of the forms of government that's out there that's been recognized. You've got many other ways, and you've got cities that have every permutation of this throughout the country. And there's lots of research that's been collected on this, on what's happening in cities and states around the country on this. And so I would just encourage, whether it's through the International City Managers Association, whether it's through the National League of Cities or the U.S. Conference of Mayors, there's lots of research on this that I think can be provided to give people, not just on this board, but the public, some intelligent information about that, in addition to the history of what's happened in this city. Now, I understand Director Hendricks feels that the at-large process is discriminatory. That's her prerogative to think that. I think there are others that don't think that. And so ultimately that might be a discussion in the future. I don't know. But I think having facts and having information is critical to making good, conscientious decisions about these things.
That's my point, Mayor. Thank you.
You're right. Director Hendricks, your light was on next.
Yeah, I just wanted, I know I'm being redundant, to share with the board. We're here to talk to one another and not to sit and, like mice, quiet. I think it's terrible. We could talk about everything else. We talked about the fundraising. There was so much chat about Saban and Scott out here raising money. That was a great big conversation. Everybody hopped in on that. But if anybody that's sitting up here that think that this board is not discriminatory, look at the ordinances on 2 occasions that I attempted to get this board to say that these young cops, the kids coming into this city, controlling this city, to live in this city, it was turned down on 2 occasions. If that's not discriminatory, I don't know what it is. But you all can take your choice. You can either decide that we're going to have an election for at-large positions, or I will just meet you all in federal court. And I'm not fooling with no county courts. We're going to the federal court. Now, the city is already inundated with lawsuits. Now, if you love to spend money, come on with it. That's all
I don't know whether threats are really the place for intentional and conscientious dialogue. I would hope that we can have conscientious dialogue, and respectfully, Director Hendricks, I think there's some people that would disagree with you relative to the issue. When you look at the percentage of African Americans that are on our police force, certainly we continue to work on that very, very hard, but I think there's some people that would probably disagree with you about your conclusions, and that's fair, but that's all part of the process. So, with that said, I've got one more person who wishes to speak, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to throw one more question in to get an answer to, if we can do that. When I was running for the board a few years ago, I looked at this question, and I think it was Memphis that had sort of a hybrid, and it might not be allowed based on the fact that we have 3 different options, but could you check and see if what they do there, they have it large, but it's by a smaller group. It's done like grouping a couple of wards together, and then they have one at large for that, and then a couple of other wards. So there's some good things about that, and maybe some negative things, but I would just like to know if they still have that, and if we can find anything else about it.
Vice Mayor, what I think would be appropriate, I mentioned Austin, but I think I need to try to find cities that are economic centers and are government centers in the country and be able to come back with some ideas of some of them. Some of them will be much larger. Kansas City is much larger than us, but it does meet the same sort of neighborhood criteria, and I'll try to look at those and bring them back.
Thank you.
Well, and Tom, if you would work with Mr. Moore in his office on this too, because, I mean, there's a lot of information, and frankly, I know you've got a lot of things on your plate, so I would like to be able to try and make sure we get some good research on this, and I'm confident you can do that along with Mr. Moore. Okay, we have Director Henderson. I got 2 cars. You want to? All right, very well. Robert Webb.
Mayor, City Director, City staff. It's kind of painful for me every time I get up here before y'all on something like this. It's kind of painful. Everybody I talk to about the at-large seems to make reference to how wards 1, 2, 6, and 7 are south of 630, and wards 3, 5, and 6. Well, was it 3? I'm getting all discombobulated. 3, 4, and 5 are north of 630. Now, some folks in my community say they feel that's their way to keep control because you have 4 black wards that will control the vote of the board. I disagree with that because I know you all personally, and I don't think it's about control. Now, if memory serves me correctly, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was once said that the reason we had 3 at large was because the mayor himself was not a full-time position. Well, now the mayor's full-time. It still doesn't explain why we still have 3 at large. Secondly, my good friend Director Richardson and Director Hendricks, they made some very good points, and I want to kind of drive home a couple of things, right? So a couple of years ago, we were having a discussion about infrastructure, and it was important to a lot of you that vote was based on need. And a lot of you who are sitting here, Director Wyrick, Director Wright, Director Richardson, Director Hendricks, and at that time, Stacey Hurst was serving in 3. They had the most need for infrastructure. The question was brought to the table that we should fund this based on need. And my good friend Dean Campiris also said, I think that's a good idea. But after the tax was passed and everything was all done, that changed. You all came back and said, you know what? Let's not do it based on need. Let's make it fair. Let's just give it to everybody. Let's give everybody the same amount of money. Now, when we looked at the sheet that you provided, I think wards 1, 6, 7, and I can't remember now. I slept a couple of days since last time I saw that sheet. But there were people who voted against their own interest. And I had to sit at home and think about that. Why would you vote against your own interest? If memory serves me correct now, I could be wrong. I doubt it, but I could be wrong. But I could swear that the person who serves in 6 voted against having the money divided evenly, divided based on need. Or I don't even know if there was a vote, but they voted for dividing it evenly. Whoever's in 7 also voted to have it divided evenly. And I couldn't understand why they would do that, because based on the need of your constituents, you would want to make the best possible vote for them. That was confusing to me. But I had the opportunity to run for an at-large position in 12, and I realized the kind of work that goes into an at-large position and the kind of money you have to raise for an at-large position versus a ward position. If you're running for a ward position, You could potentially run a successful campaign with $25,000, potentially. But if you're running for an at-large, 25,000 ain't even a drop in a bucket because you're running in 7 wards. So I understand that maybe I don't know this to be true, it's just my conjecture. Maybe some of the people who voted against their own best interests understood how hard it is to try to raise money against an at-large position. I get that. But at the end of the day, we have to have the conversation because I've watched this happen. I watched this play out time and time again, and I don't know what the rationale was for some of these things, but I'll give you a great example. We had a long discussion about crime and talked about how we were going to impact crime in a positive way. Other than police, we had that conversation. Director Richardson introduced an ordinance. It was called the DAY Ordinance, Disconnected Youth and Adult Ordinance. It was going to give bid preference to contractors or whoever who bid on state contracts who were willing to hire disconnected youth and adults. Director Adcock went out and got the construction community to come in and say that was a bad idea. She's at large. She went out and said that was a bad idea. But when we have conversations about crime, there are no other solutions brought to the table. Director Compuris said that he would work with Director Richardson to get the ordinance back and have it make more sense. I was a little confused by that when I didn't understand how it would make more sense. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I mean, you get bid preference. They didn't ask for anything else. You just get bid preference. Director had just talked about her residency ordinance. What's interesting about the residency ordinance is that everybody voted against it. And I think it was probably, I'll say maybe 2 months later, there was an ordinance introduced that would give bid preference to companies in Little Rock. Residency again, but it was approved. I'm confused. I mean, and so these things kind of make you question the at-large position and why they're there. Are they really progressive? Because the mayor likes to say that Little Rock's a progressive city. And the only thing that's progressive about our city is our form of government. Nothing else is really progressive about our city when you start talking about ordinance that we've put forth and things that we've done in our city. I'd like to see us be progressive. And when I say progressive, I mean, I like to see us take a chance sometimes. And I understand that you want to be good stewards and you don't want to get out there and you don't want to do things that are, that might draw some backlash. I get that. But I think sometimes y'all have to represent us. And sometimes representing us means getting it wrong. Sometimes representing us means doing a thing that we don't understand, right? Now, if at some point you come back and tell me that this residency is something that I just don't get, I'll take that. But if you don't have a conversation about it, I'll feel like you're doing something nefarious. Because I think I've made some very valid points to why we should at least have the conversation. And if you don't think so, then I guess that would lead me to believe what my friends seem to believe, that it's a control mechanism, that the at-large positions are used for nothing but control. And if that's not the truth, let's have the conversation. Again, I love you all, and maybe we can get together sometime and talk about the at-large, or maybe you could do it right now. But y'all have a great day, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. The next card I have is from Russ Raycop on the issue.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned doing some studies and having things like that. Well, we have a homegrown study that was done by Jay Barth and 2 other individuals at Hendricks. It's entitled Governance in Little Rock, Arkansas at Large District Elections and the Impact on Representation. That's downloadable on the internet. And if you can't download it, just let me know and I'll send you a copy. For all that our cultural movement reveres localism as matters of food, drink, and commerce, city government tends to remain an obscure arena even for the otherwise politically engaged. As for the structure of municipal government, how its institutions and political processes function, that initially sounds more esoteric, the domain of academics and crazy neighborhood activists, yet the truth is that how we elect leaders determines the sorts of people who win office, which in turns the course of history of our city. The authors of this study, after examining the results of 128 races for Little Rock City government between 1957 and 2012, concluded that a shift to a system in which representatives are elected entirely based on geographic wards, as opposed to citywide at-large races, would result in more minority and female members on the city board of directors and create a more vibrant, competitive, and less expensive election in the city. Now, I want you to hear that again. More minority and female city members on the city board. There are two ways a city can elect its leaders. Some cities, typically smaller ones, choose from a slate of at-large candidates to represent the entire city, while geographically subdivide into wards, each which elect its own representative. A few cities, like Little Rock, do both. Out of the 10 seats on the board, 3 are elected at large and the other 7 are elected by wards. The hybrid model was approved by voters back in the 1990s, and before that the board was made up of 7 members who were all elected at large. Our blended system is convenient for social scientists because it provides both at play in the same place. It introduces a lot of controls and allows us to look at variances between the two techniques for electing people within the same city. But some say the 3 at-large positions effectively constitute a means by which the wider, wealthier segments of the city continue to exert undue influence on the board. It's more difficult for minority candidates to gain a foothold when running for citywide seats. The argument goes both because Little Rock's racially divided electorate is less likely to vote for people of color in its at-large campaigns, and because those elections are larger and therefore more costly. The current composition of the city board seems to bear this out. The population of Little Rock is about 42% African American, and 3 out of 7 of our directors, elected by wards, are black. Among ward directors, then, city leadership corresponds proportionally to racial demographics. The 3 African American directors represent 43% of the board. However, all 3 of the at-large directors are white. Although Hispanics now constitute at least 5% of the city, the board has never had an Hispanic director. As was discussed, Representative Walker, the well-known civil rights attorney who's been shouting for decades about the disenfranchisement of Little Rock's black community, has stated that the idea of at-large directors is to cancel out minority votes on the board so as to leave control in the hands of a handful of people in town. It is a deliberate neglect, a lack of inclusion. The Hendricks study doesn't make any claims about such intent, but it does show that individual wards are much more likely to vote for a minority candidate than as a city as a whole. Data from the past half-century of Little Rock races reveals that about 87.6% of at-large elections have resulted in the election of a white candidate, compared to about 59% of the ward ones. The bottom line, if we want the racial makeup of our city to more closely reflect the demographics of Little Rock, eliminate the at-large seats. Some see Little Rock's larger pattern of development as a product of a city board whose composition is inclined to be sympathetic to westward white flight. Again, Representative Walter had stated that Chenal and all the areas out there represents movement of the city institutions from downtown to the west. Walker argued that the city's concerted investment in transportation infrastructure and city services in West Little Rock worked to the detriment of neighborhoods closer to downtown and lower income areas. Tax revenue base is not out west. It's basically in the areas of the old city and the industrial district near the port. The use of the money in the inner city, they build police stations and call them community centers. They don't build up parks. The housing that they once promoted, they now leave in disrepair. That was Representative Walker's statements. And you can go around the 12th Street Station and the Willie Hinton Center. Right there behind those, you have boarded up houses. And if you go down that street towards downtown, you'll see every other house is boarded down. In a city that continues to be de facto segregated by race, it makes intuitive sense that a ward system would be friendlier to minority candidates. A more surprising find from this Hendricks study is that there's even a stronger correlation between ward elections and female representation. The paper states that ward elections reduce the likelihood of electing a male candidate from 81% to 51%. I don't like those statistics being a candidate, but that's the truth. The higher cost of at-large races is the key driver. If elections are cheaper, then political money doesn't matter as much. And we know from a whole line of research that women do have special challenges when it comes to fundraising. In a ward election, networks of friends and neighbors are as valuable as advertising money. Women disproportionately have a lot of those networks through both formal and informal organizations like churches, community groups, and parent-teacher associations, where women have been central players over the long haul. The Hendricks study also makes it clear that successful at-large campaigns are far more expensive. The average total campaign expenditure for winners in at-large elections since 1992 has been about $50,227 compared to a mere $8,767 in Ward 1s. For runners-up, the two numbers are $26,000 and $3,000 respectively. What the study does show is that ward-based elections are more likely to result in a city board whose composition is consistent with the demographics of Little Rock as a whole. I think we can with confidence say that ward elections do promote more gender diversity and more racial diversity. Whether or not you think that indicates it's time for another change in how Little Rock elects its directors probably depends upon whether you tend to think of equitable racial and gender representations as an essential component of true democracy or as a nice political lagniappe. All well and good when it happens, but hardly the point of governance. Please discuss this matter and put it to a vote by the people. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Raykop. Director Hines.
Just wanted to clarify something that my friend Robert Webb said. Before we ever put the sales tax on the ballot, we all agreed at this body that it would be split equally between the wards before we ever went out and asked for votes in this. So I want to, and then there would be a 10% held back for a citywide fund project. So it was split equally between the wards with a 10% holdback. That was what was decided before we went out to put it on the ballot.
Director Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I had vowed to just stay a silent observer to see how the conversation was going to transpire. However, I will issue this statement for the board's edification. I attend a lot of meetings in Ward 6. And not one time has ever has any one of my constituents ever raised this issue. That's why I'm not weighing in here. But I will say this. Now that we've had this open meeting and we're discussing it here, I invite any of them, if this is of a concern to them, bring it up at the neighborhood meetings that we attend. Thank you.
All right. Director Hendricks.
I just must respond to Director Wright. Minorities know what's going on, but as a race of people, we won't speak what it is that's unfair in large numbers. That's all I hear in Ward 1 because I've educated the people that I serve. I make them aware. You can look at this board and tell it's discriminatory when you look at the numbers. That's not to say that they're ignorant or whatever, they just don't know. But I guarantee you, you can ask any, I would say 3/4 of the blacks in Ward 1, and they can tell you they know about the at-large because I've shared that with them with a master's degree in planning and development. And that's what we need to do. No, they're going to tell you, I can talk to many blacks just throughout the city. When I said, do you know what at-large position is? What is that? They don't know. In fact, we didn't know. I didn't know until I got up here back in the 90s. I didn't know nothing about what the at-large was going to do. At-large seemed like it would be fair, but at-large is not fair. When it comes to 3 blacks sitting up here, I have run against Compuris. I ran against Compuris in the 90s at the at-large position. I didn't spend a lot of money, didn't intend to spend a lot of money. But I knew that I was not going to win, but I said I'd be darned if I let Compuris run again without opposition. And I have helped Robert and all these other blacks that you see that have run against at-large people. Irma Hendricks helped to fit that bill. But you don't find many Irma Hendricks. I had a father that was a strong man, and he taught us that I'm somebody. The other thing that I wanted to say, and I hope this will be closing, if I would like to ask, this was supposed to be an ordinance, and then with instructions and all that stuff, we changed it to an ad, to talk about it in discussion. So I am asking that we vote that, Tom, would you finish out the ordinance that I asked for? And that's what, and maybe I'm not asking for a vote. I'd rather do the thing, it's a policy that if it's a certain way that you can go, that you don't have to get permission from this board to bring forth an ordinance. So that's what I would be doing, bringing an ordinance for you all to shake it or break it. It doesn't make me any difference. And if you want to lose money going to court, that's your business. Tom?
I just wanted to mention that both drafts of the ordinance you requested have been shared with the Board of Directors.
Yes,
And they have those.
So I could,
You
I don't
can
have
ask
to
it
beg for them to vote, for this to be on the ballot for us to vote? I
You
don't
can
beg
ask
to.
it to be placed on the agenda for a vote as a member of the Board of Directors, yes.
Ask for a vote? No, I wish you would have this. Do I have to go? I'm asking you that. I don't want to vote.
Make it known tonight, then in the meeting 2 weeks from now, the ordinance will be on the agenda.
And that's not a motion, right?
That's a matter of right.
Okay. I'm asking that Attorney Carpenter prepare, well, it's already put together, if you would put that ordinance on the agenda. And I'm not asking for no vote because I know I go. In fact, I think I brought it because I pulled it up, okay? Mayor?
I'm sorry, you've got to speak up. I don't think anybody can hear
Okay,
you.
the ordinance that was prepared a few weeks ago or a few days ago, and we brought it down to having this conversation, I'm asking that Mr. Carpenter put that ordinance on the agenda 2 weeks from now.
All right, so does that presume then that all of this research and discussion based on the requests that were made would be done within the next 2 weeks? I just want to be clear, because if you're
ordinance is
putting it on
already-
the agenda for 2 weeks, that means that there's a lot of questions that may have to have answers that, from a priority standpoint, that we've asked our staff to do.
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said. I mean,
It's not making
Director
sense.
Richardson asked for a variety of things to be researched. I think there are other board members that they would like to have certain things researched. And the suggestion was made to get that information into both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office.
Well, I
And
don't
if you
like-
want this to be voted on in 2 weeks, which
Yes,
I understand
yes.
you've got that right to do, it's just going to dictate what they do relative to getting answers to these questions.
2 weeks. I don't know who he's pleasing, but I'm asking that it be done in 2 weeks.
That's
it.
your prerogative.
That's right.
As Mr. Carpenter indicated. Okay. Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I don't want to speak for Director Hendricks. I don't expect all this research to be done in the time frame that's been mentioned, but I don't think Director Hendricks is basing her recommendation on the information that I requested. I hadn't talked to her about any of those questions or points I wanted to make, and it's been my assumption, and Irma, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that you could care less if this information is gathered for the presentation of your ordinance to us. And as I said, again and again, I had no intention on speaking on this tonight. I had planned on being a silent observer just to gauge the direction of the conversation. But it wasn't until that statement was made at my infrastructure meeting on April 16th from John about the involvement or lack of involvement of at-large directors in these very important infrastructure projects that we're moving forward with. So that's the impetus for my conversation. And Tom, I hear your question for Irma. I don't get the sense that Irma was even concerned whether or not this information is relevant to her decision to move forward with this ordinance.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, the statement I made was that the at-large directors are not invited to meetings with you to discuss the infrastructure. that you invite each one of the ward directors to your office to talk about the infrastructure in their ward, but that the at-large directors are not invited to discuss that. Is that correct?
That's correct, Director Adcock, and that's the process I've used since the sales tax and bond issue passed back in 2011 and 2012.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our discussion on this matter. No, it's not. If you'll hit your button, please. If you'll hit it again, then it's not. There you go. All right, go ahead.
Back to what Director Richardson was saying. You know, I got some black folks that I don't trust, and I don't know whether somebody has talked to Ken. I don't talk about people behind their back, okay? So that's how I feel. And my other son out there, he wants me to listen to Ken, but they know I'll front on them. I don't care. They're just like boys to me.
Director Hendricks, may I ask a question of
What?
you? First off, you've got the right to have this on the agenda in 2 weeks. There has been a request for information. Some of this information we have been gathering ever since the John Walker lawsuit was filed.
Okay.
So I can get a great deal to you. May I suggest that 2 weeks from tonight, I provide the board with the report that answers the questions that have been asked tonight, any other questions I get, and the information we have as to the forms available to you, how they're elected, and what the process is, and so forth. And once that's been delivered, you ask that your ordinance be placed on 2 weeks after that. That only extends the vote you want for 2 weeks, and it gives a chance to get all the questions answered.
I hear you, but you know, you play with toys, and I'm not a toy. I want to stay in here in 2 weeks. Okay?
You want the vote in 2 weeks? Or?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. I'm old enough to know, smell something when I know what I'm talking about.
All right, Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. Last point. I think when I began my statements, and we can check the tape, I think that when I mentioned or made mention of the fact that Director Adcock mentioned that we didn't have any involvement from the at-large directors, I think I said by force or choice, that sends some significant, it makes a significant statement to me about that whole process. So I think if we check the tape, when I said there wasn't any involvement, I said she didn't say that they were forced to. She said that they were not involved, and I said by force or choice, that made a significant statement to me, and that's what made me spend the time writing down the questions and concerns that I had. As I said before, I had no intention on speaking on this had that statement not been made on Monday, April 16th during that meeting. So with that, I make a motion to go to executive session.
There's a motion and a second to move into executive session for the purpose of personnel issues. Okay, discussion on the motion. Director Adcock.
Yes. Mayor, we was not advised of this before. You was absent last week, and we was not told last week we was going into executive session. Some of us may have made other plans, knowing this was going to be probably a 6:30, 8 o'clock, 6:30, 7:30 meeting. And also, I don't think that either one of the people we are in there discussing was made aware that we was going to do evaluations tonight.
Well, you know, we haven't not reviewed our two employees. I think they're both aware that that's our process. I know that we had a recent report done, and we can either move forward and have discussion and begin this process, or we can put it off like we've done many other times. So
I know Mr. Moore has always given us his goals and other things before he did his evaluation. And Mr.
Well,
Carpenter has always prepared for his evaluation. And I don't feel like it's fair to either one of these men for us to go in and do an evaluation of them, and they have not been told that we would be doing it tonight.
Okay, all right. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If you'll put your light on, please.
Did Joan get a second?
Yeah, I heard a second.
Oh, you did?
Oh, no, I didn't. Joan hadn't made any motions.
Oh, you
There's a
didn't make
motion to go into executive session. It was seconded. Director Campiris.
I agree with Joan completely. I think that it is you can't tell someone they're going to have their evaluation 2 or 3 hours before you do it and expect them to be ready and have the information ready. And I don't think it's fair and not the proper way to do it, and we've never done it that way. And it's, I mean, we've always announced 2 weeks before time that we're going to do something. And there's just something that is not fair about doing it this way.
Call for the question. Can we call for the question?
The question's called. All in favor of going into executive session indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, saying nay.
Nay.
Roll call. Go to work. I pay you.
Director Peck? Aye. Director Hines? Aye. Director Wright?
Aye.
Director Wyrick? Aye. Director Compuris?
No.
Director Fortson? Aye. Director Adcock?
No.
Director Hendricks?
No.
Director Richardson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Webb?
I ain't going in there.
7-3.
7-3, we'll be in executive session. I'm not sure whether this will be a short or a long one, but we'll be back. Thank you. We're back in session. We're back in session. We've had an executive session to talk about our personnel. No vote, no action was taken. However, we will continue our evaluations in a recess meeting next week. So if there's a motion to that effect, please. There's a motion to recess this meeting till next week. Oh, okay. All right. We'll hold the vote on that to let you tell us a few other things first. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry. If you'll hit your button again, please. I'm sorry.
I have a constituent who is very concerned about her street. There are ditches in front of her house. And Mr. Moore sent this out in 2016. And he said that this is what he said: if the decision is made to pursue this addition to the scope of work, staff would recommend the project extension be approved by the board, along with increases in the contract amounts for the contractor and design engineer. In addition, there is the matter of that additional easement acquisition would be required. The scope should include both sides of the street to the first or second lot so that the full intersection will be included in the improvements. It is estimated that this revision will cost approximately $70,000, and this allocation would need to come from future Ward 6 allocations. I need the board to support me in getting Mr. Moore to do an amendment to the contract that we approved for Potter Street to add this $70,000 so that I can get Ms. Faye Parker's issue taken care of. What do I need to do, Mr. Carpenter, to get this done?
Well, I think what I would recommend is let me go back and look at the contract, because if it's under a certain percentage, we can amend it, but we'll also reallocate some of the Ward 6 dollars in the.
All I need is a commitment. This woman has called me repeatedly, and I even gave you her number. And you came out previously and looked at this, and I thought we had it taken care of. Now you tell me this, and you say, well, it needs to come back to the board, and I'm putting it to the board, and you're telling me now that you can go back and look and do possibly an amendment. Y'all hear this, right? I don't care. I want this done. $70,000 is not a lot of money to get this elderly lady's front of her house taken care of. She says the water is coming up in her yard, it's not draining properly, and she can't use her property. And for $70,000, I'd like to see this take place. So whatever you tell me we need to do, I've got the board here, and I believe they'll support me in getting this done.
Okay, right. You sent me that earlier today. I found the memo from 2016. I said I'd like to go back and look at how much the contract, because if it's over 20%, I've got to bring it to the board. If it's not, I could administratively do it potentially. And then again, like I said, we'll have to reallocate some of the Ward $6.
Okay, well,
I understand that.
when can you get this done?
I'm going to look at it this week.
Okay, can I tell her within 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Sure,
I'll-
sure.
Okay, so y'all just stick a pin in this because it may have to come back to us.
That's fine.
But Ms. Parker,
Existing allocation
yes.
for Ward 6, so it's
Yes.
a matter of reallocating money if necessary, and if, depending on how much it is, it may have to come back to the board.
Well,
Okay.
he's saying 70,000 here, so it may be less, he's saying. But anyway, Ms. Parker, I know you're watching, so I told you I was going to do this.
Okay, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a comment in response to something that was said earlier tonight. Sometimes when people say things that we know are inaccurate and we don't respond, that is a way that things get perpetuated. And I just want to remind folks that it was not too many months ago when we had the OK program here for a presentation at City Board after they completed a cooking class, a series of cooking classes that at that point that Director Peck and I had participated in, and it was not too long after that that we started a second series of cooking classes with the OK program that Director Wyrick came and participated in the graduation ceremony and actually presented the graduation certificates and the gifts to the young men who were graduating. So to be told that we don't support the OK program, and again, I can't speak for everybody else, but is a little bit offensive, and I think we're remiss when we don't correct statements that are like that.
And
That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Webb.
And in addition to that, obviously the board is aware that we have a sergeant and 2 officers that are assigned to the OK program and the GEM program. That's over a $250,000 commitment just in salaries and benefits, not in addition to the operating expense. So the city clearly is very supportive and has been for quite some time.
Okay, there's a motion to recess until next Tuesday. We'll do that meeting right after our agenda meeting. And there's a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We are in recess. Thank you.